Michal Rusinek, Little Chopin. Michal Rusinek, Little Chopin. Translation by Antonia Lloyd-Jones. Illustrated by Joanna Rusinek. Dearest little boys and girls, you know what it wouldn't strain us to look around and find a statue representing someone famous. Here's a fellow up on horseback. He's got wings that look like sails. There's a lady with a shield and a mermaid's scaly tail. Over there beneath that tree trunk, by the pond that looks quite inky, sits a chap with head turned sideways as if smelling something stinky. Have you ever stopped to wonder who these famous folk might be, or what they did when they lived here, when they weren't just sitting tightly? I will tell you a big secret, quiet now, but the people who are represented in the statues once were children, just like you are. For example, Freddie Chopin, we've met them by the pond already, used to be young Master Fred, or even smaller, little Freddie. As a child, just like his statue, he would pull an ugly face when for dinner every Tuesday, spinach, yuck, made him grimace. All this happened in the old days. What's the best way to make it clear? Although they did eat boiled spinach, inventing the iPod was nowhere near. So when the little boy called Freddie wanted music for listening, he asked his mom to play the piano and Daddy to play his violin. Freddie's dad was born in France, where words are said in a funny way, not at all how they're written, but to the French they sound okay. When a person is called Chopin, even though it starts with a ch, it's pronounced Chopin or Chopin. It's a Frenchman's national feature. Freddie and his 3 young sisters, Mr. Chopin and his spouse, lived in Poland by a river in a great big country house. Freddie used to like the same games all your children love to play. He made tiny boats from tree bark, then he watched them float away. If his parents were too busy to spend time with little boys, he would walk in woods and meadows, listening to nature's noise. One day, Freddie was fully focused on nature sounds when suddenly hundreds of savage ants were on him, the kind that eat little children for their tea. Do you think that he was frightened? Never. The Chopins are famously brave. He shook and he shook till the ants fell off onto a page with a musical stave. Then he slammed his notebook shut and ran home quick. That afternoon, he showed his folks the squashed ants page, and they began to hum a tune. And when they said congratulations for writing his first ever march, the ants woke up, and in a neat line, they marched off across the porch. And so Fred's first composition vanished from the page forever. But those ants in his band's marching, could young Fred forget them? Never. But he didn't need more help from creepy bugs that make you ill, though he got the birds to aid him writing notes with a feather quill. One early morning Fred got up when it was still dark in the manor. Rubbing his eyes on his way to the loo, he bumped into the grand piano. For grand pianos like to prowl about the house while people snore. All day they stand and keep quite still to let you play. That's what they're for. They have 3 legs, a great long body, and huge white jaws like a crocodile. 88 teeth grin out at you, and sometimes they ring instead of smile. When this monster whacked our Freddie, it gave out a mournful groan. Fred was worried for the creature. Maybe the toothache is making it moan. With a thorough, careful survey, Fred soon noticed what a frightful mess the monster's teeth were. Half of them were black as night. Fred decided to take action. though the house was still asleep, so he fetched a pair of pliers to pull out those rotten teeth. Freddie almost made the monster wholly, like a big Swiss cheese. Just in time it was explained that those weren't teeth, but piano keys. And the piano had not stopped him to make him a dental clinician, but wanted, as young Freddie's friend, to teach him to be a top musician. This three-legged teacher quickly taught him all the skills that it possessed, all about rhythm, scales, and tempos, octaves, fifths, and flats, and rests. It taught him how to play upon it music by other composers too, as well as to write his very own pieces on a stave all blank and new. After such a course, young Freddie was rightly called a prodigy, and if it had yet been invented, it'd have been on the TV. In those days, there were no reporters to put him in the public glare, so he could play in peace and quiet with his toys or his musical flair. One year, according to Easter tradition, his mum baked a mazurka cake, Frederick's favorite, so he ate it without sharing. Big mistake. He got into trouble and found out stomachache just isn't yummy. All night he felt like costumed couples were dancing about in his tummy. He listened to his tummy's rhythms. Those were the dances we called folk. He heard the mazur, the oberek, then the kujavjak, and awoke. At once he made up 2 mazurkas, but not the kind for gobbling. When these are played on the piano, they sound like Fred's tummy wobbling. Dances for boys, you must be joking. But children, you must not forget that in the days when Frederick lived, the engine wasn't invented yet. And so there weren't yet any cars, neither parked nor reviving their motors. No Polonaises, a Polish make, no imported Jeeps, and no Toyotas. In other words, if our friend Freddie had wanted to take his driving test, he'd have to wait 100 years for cars to be made, that long at least. But he wasn't quite so patient, so crunching on meringue aux fraises, he worked hard, and in a fortnight he composed 2 polonaises. The polonaise is a folk dance tune, Polish, as you won't be slow to guess, that copies the pace of walking, not the rhythm of a motor. Motors are motors, and cars are cars. But don't you children always holler, "Wow, amazing, that is awesome," when you see a big steamroller? But nothing rolled in Chopin's lifetime quite like the waltz. You know it for sure. Yes, it's a tune that couples dance to on a parquet ballroom floor. Waltz time is not like the beat of this poem. On it rolls, on it rolls, on it rolls fast, just like a train when it's racing to get there, though there were none of those then in the past. So Fred didn't sit there staring at all kinds of new machine, but he made up lots of waltzes sounding lovely and serene. Once he wrote a graceful rondo, that means round, just like a ring, though a rondo's not for wearing, but like all tunes, for listening. The rondo is quite like a song. It has no words, no need for learning, because it has a fixed refrain that's like a boomerang returning. So let's get back to Frederick, who always was a mucky pup. His hands were inky from composing, but one fine day he was grown up. That gorgeous child was gone forever, but what happened? Quite a rare thing. Fred was gorgeous as a grown-up, everybody's favorite darling. He toured the world performing concerts and composing lovely tunes or teaching others how to play them, as had done his three-legged tutor. If he was homesick, he wrote letters, never texts. He had no phone, until he came back home forever as a statue made of stone. So he sits quietly by the duck pond, there in comfort, turning his head. He remembers life as Master Fred, or even smaller, little Freddie.